Hello sci-fi fans, you're listening to the Sci-Fi Ideas podcast. I'm Mark Ball. Now the last time David and I recorded a podcast, we talked for nearly 2 hours, and I decided to cut the podcast in half. That turned out to be quite a fortunate thing, as we haven't had time to record another podcast since then, so I can now bring you the second half of that episode instead, originally recorded in March 2014. We'll call this one episode 5.1, and in this one we're talking about medical technology in science fiction and its impact on future societies. Here it is.
Well, I'm so very digga by nature, and if you don't say digga digga to your mates, you're gonna lose a papa. So let the people smile. How can I be a virgin now?
So we got a message from Chris Kentley of Ennead Games, role-playing resources. He wants us to talk about medicine in science fiction. He wrote on our Facebook page, medical procedures in sci-fi films and shows.
Oh.
The bit in Prometheus, for example.
Oh, right, okay. Wow, yeah. This can be complicated, because I don't know that much about medical stuff. Everything I know I know about medical, I learnt from
Star Trek Voyager.
Voyager, yeah. Yeah. Well, because that series, they did focus a lot on, medical things and the Doctor and nanotechnology and things like that, didn't they?
Because they had the Doctor, and the Doctor was an interesting character.
Well, yeah, I suppose it could have gone a different way. If Harry Kim was really interesting character, then we might have seen a lot more about whatever he does, which I don't even know.
Plays the clarinet and does his job really efficiently.
Yeah. So, well,
the bit in Prometheus, yes, I know what he's talking about there. Brilliant.
Yeah, the bit with the squid.
The bit with the squid, yeah. Although, why did that woman have...
I can't remember now. Oh, she was pregnant, wasn't she?
She had the alien squid inside her, yeah.
She was only pregnant with the alien, she wasn't pregnant with a baby.
No, it was a baby alien squid. But the machine wasn't programmed for female medical procedures.
Was it not?
If I remember correctly.
Hang on. Well, let's start
it was
from the
kind of
beginning.
weird. Why did she have that machine, that woman?
Well, Prometheus had a lot of mysteries in it, really, and you weren't quite sure if they just didn't know, or they did know but weren't telling you. So, remind me again the whole story, because it's been a while since I've seen Prometheus. So this woman's
I can't really remember, and I don't particularly choose to. Because it was a terrible film.
Oh, it wasn't the best film. I was so looking forward to it because I thought it could have been brilliant.
It could have been, but it wasn't. It was silly.
Oh, silly's
great. It was a
great.
mash of different tropes.
I like silly. Silly's good, but they were deliberately toying with you as the audience.
Yeah, trying to make it clever, and the result was just very silly.
By having these mysteries, which weren't really
trying
mysteries.
Trying to pretend that it was cleverer than it was.
Well, maybe it is.
Or maybe it is really clever.
They could still save it with a sequel that explains things and makes you think, actually that is really good. But I don't think they're going to.
But there are still some very stupid moments in it that just. I mean, watch that Red Letter Media review of it, where they're basically just asking lots of questions about why does this happen. Why is the old man actually a young man in old man makeup? Yeah,
that is a good point. Why didn't they just
get an old man?
Employ someone who was older? Well, I assume the reason for that is that they were going to have another film that had the same character, and maybe he would...
No, it's because they used him in the trailer, and the trailers... It was like a TED Talk thing, wasn't it?
It was a TED Talk. It was actually a TED Talk, in the future. And I thought that was brilliant. That was loads better than the film.
That was great, yeah.
It was good.
But it just kind of shows that the promotion was more important than the actual movie.
Yeah.
Which is wrong.
No, I don't think that's wrong. I think that you need to do a lot of good promotion, and that adds a lot of cool depth to it, because they had loads of stuff about the...
Oh, yeah.
Don't
get me wrong, it was great promotion. It's just that it affected the film in a negative way by having Guy Pearce in old man makeup.
Yeah. He did. It looked obviously Guy Pearce in old man makeup, didn't it?
Yeah.
It did distract from the movie, which is very, very annoying.
So then why did the aliens hate him? Why everything?
Anyway, we're not supposed to be reviewing Prometheus. So
it's just terrible.
just talking about the medical procedures. So she gets this alien inside her. She goes to this machine and programs in that she wants cesarean? An abortion, was it?
Yeah.
So,
well, no, I suppose cesarean. Yeah.
What did it do? Because I can't remember. Does it like
It
laser
lasered her open, and it was really horrific.
And then like a robot arm goes inside.
But she was sealed in this medical pod. So then she was sealed in with this squid thing. It's horrible.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Really,
so the squid thing comes out and then starts trying to attack her.
Yeah.
Okay,
really brilliant scene in an otherwise terrible movie.
So is that realistic then? Is that a realistic portrayal of technology?
I think that is, yeah. In deep space, you won't necessarily have a doctor on board. I think a pod like that would be really useful.
But does a robot's hand and like a claw, like it was like a big grabber, wasn't it? Would that have the same sort of dexterity?
Well, it could potentially have greater dexterity than a human hand. But no, I'm not suggesting that a robot would be better than a human doctor, but certainly useful.
I think the physical technology of like any hands and grabbers and any kind of instrument could be the same, if not better, than humans, because robots have steady hands.
Yes,
things.
We use robotic instruments like that in modern surgery, don't we?
Do we?
Well, for keyhole surgery, for example.
Oh, is this where a doctor will like wear some sort of like virtual reality glove, and then he'll be just moving around in?
Exactly, yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of gesturing with my hands right now, even though you can't see, which is ridiculous. Okay, so we've got that already. So we're almost there. We've got sci-fi technology right now.
Yes, yeah. That's why I think that's really believable.
Well, let's talk about some other things then. So what have we seen?
Well, let's talk about the Doctor in Voyager, because he's really a medical machine, isn't he?
So he's a hologram with the knowledge of like every doctor on Earth, isn't he? So,
and he has a steady hand because he's artificial.
Can he touch things? Oh, he can, can't he? He's not like...
He can touch things, yeah, but selectively so. He can also make himself non-physical. So, theoretically, he could then reach inside a person and perform keyhole surgery.
I've always wondered about that. Can he really?
I don't see why not, yeah.
Yeah, but isn't he projected light?
He is, but he has a physical presence as well. He can handle instruments, he can touch people. But he can then also turn off the force field element and let objects pass through him. So he can mix that and have parts of his body kind of on and parts off, so that he can reach through you and like potentially grab your heart.
Oh my god, that sounds bloody dangerous. He did do that in an episode, didn't he? Or someone did that.
Did he?
Like,
I was thinking that.
Reached in and grabbed someone's heart, I think. Unless I'm...
Yes, I think an evil version of him did.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that was the Doctor from the Equinox.
Yes.
In that brilliant episode.
So but they never show that happening. I suppose it's a bit complicated to explain all that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine to sort of show him grabbing someone's heart. You can explain that quite well, but complicated keyhole surgery using his fingertips.
Now, another complicated way in which they used the same holographic technology was Neelix's artificial lungs. Yeah,
so they used the same projectors for the Doctor to give Neelix these lungs, but he couldn't move, could he?
Yes. He had to stay in this kind of like an iron lung contraption, keeping him perfectly still.
Yeah.
Because these holographic lungs had to line up perfectly with his other internal organs.
Mm-hmm.
But because they were holographic, they were programmed to allow air through into the bloodstream, but then still have a physical presence as well.
So that's kind of like what you said first then, about the Doctor selectively choosing which bits are solid and which bits are not. Okay. Yeah. Right. What else have we seen in Star Trek? Worf, for a time, had a... He was on his back, wasn't he?
He had an artificial spine, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, he was given it.
They used the replicators to create a new spine for him.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
You know what? We've kind of got almost there now, because we use 3D printing to replicate things. Like, I'm sure I've
Yeah,
seen
hang
articles...
on. Let's not confuse replicators and 3D printing.
Well, it's the
People
same sort
like...
of thing, though, isn't it?
It's not, though. It's completely not. And I'm starting to get annoyed by all these articles out there going, oh, 3D printing, it's Star Trek's replication technology. It's not. All it is a printer that,
doing...
instead of putting down ink, it puts down other materials.
Yeah.
Now, a replicator was an energy into matter thing going on, which is incredibly advanced.
So it's doing it on a molecular level, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
just changing matter of some sort into, rearranging the molecules and particles. I'm not quite sure which one it is. The atoms, essentially, so that it's a certain type of material. But with 3D printing, you know what material it's going to be.
Yeah, you're taking a material, you're breaking it down onto a molecular level, and then you're reconstructing it into another form. It's like Lego.
Yeah, I suppose.
Now, for a really good example is somebody's come up with a 3D printer that makes pizzas, and they're talking about putting this on potentially the space station or future spacecraft, potentially maybe going to Mars or whatever.
But does that mean it has...
People are saying, oh my god, it's a food replicator. Hang on, it's not. Because a food replicator can do many things, and it doesn't have any material with it. You don't have to have stores of stuff. You just have energy. But what this is, it basically, it's got broken down bits of dough and tomato and cheese.
So you have to have the base components there.
Yeah. And all it's doing is taking them and rearranging them. And that's actually really inefficient. It would actually be more efficient to just have some frozen pizzas in storage. Rather than taking some pizzas, breaking them down and rebuilding them at a later date.
Does sound a bit daft when you put it like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're talking about medical things.
Yeah.
What other films, books, TV series, science fiction that... Oh, how about, the hyperspray in Star Trek? That was something that... Well, I think we
Which
can
again
do
has become
now.
reality, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. So it just kind of injects it straight into your skin by just forcing material, forcing the powders.
Yes, taking very, very fine particles and forcing them through the skin.
But it doesn't work quite like Star Trek, does it? It's on Star Trek they just go psst, done.
Yeah, which is a much bigger device, and I think it probably leaves a bruise or something. Now, it's not as effective as a needle.
Is it not? Oh.
Well, because a needle, you're squirting something straight in, whereas this, you need very, very fine particles to go through skin, so you can't get the same load, if that makes sense.
Right, okay. I suppose
I believe, I don't really know, but it's useful in battlefield situations where you need to do something really quickly. You don't have time for needles or... Yeah, and you can have somebody who's not trained properly, can just kind of squirt it into somebody.
Okay.
But in the ideal environment, a needle is still a much better.
Well, you want it to go straight into the vein, don't you? You don't want to
exactly
spray it in someone's skin.
Yeah, unless you're in a hurry, like in a battlefield.
But that's no longer science fiction. In that case,
no, that's now fact. Yeah,
that's now fact. So we might see other things that we've talked about already being science facts.
Yeah. Well, Worf's replicated spine. Yeah, 3D printing. Right, we have got 3D printing with stem cells could do this.
Really?
Now, what's interesting there is not the 3D printer, because the 3D printer is just a printer in 3D, which is useful, but it's not, oh my god, wow. What's interesting is the stem cells and actually turning cells into other types of cell.
Oh.
Being able to arrange them with 3D printer would be really useful.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because 3D printing, I went to a talk about it a while ago, and they said that it's not a new thing. It's become.
It's been around for a long time. Yeah,
since the 80s,
but mainly
apparently.
using plastics.
Yeah,
it's just an advanced form of injection molding, basically.
Well, it's not.
But when you combine it with,
thing.
No, it's not molding because there's no mold.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've been using plastics just to layer up plastic to create 3D objects. But if you combine it with stem cell technology, then that does become interesting because you can print an organ potentially.
What about printing a bone? I know it's more simple than doing an organ. Can you just print a bone using the technology that we have now? you can't, can you? Because your body will reject it.
I don't know how you would get the bone to the pieces of bone to adhere to each other.
Yeah. But then I've seen 3D printing being used to create things like casts for people's arms and bits inside your body more easily than.
Oh yeah,
the
yeah.
alternative is.
For creating complicated objects, it's really useful because you can build things from the inside out.
What about those booth things in that film? You know that film with the giant Taurus in space. What's it called again?
Elysium.
Elysium. They had these booth things that you go in and it just makes
yeah.
you...
It was a magic booth, wasn't it? It was just.
So there's no science there whatsoever. It just automatically fixes you.
Again, it was like the thing in Prometheus that you go inside and it does some medicine to you, and they never explained what. It was just it made you well.
I suppose they didn't need to because that wasn't the point of the film.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that sort of thing could come true.
Oh yeah. A bed that cures you. Yeah. Well, we've talked about using robotic technology and all these different other types of technology. This bed could use a variety of those, but it was never said what. So.
No, true. Okay, well, what other examples of medical technology have we seen? How about this one? In the Final Fantasy film, did you ever see that?
Yes.
It was just a film called Final Fantasy. It had nothing to do with any of the games.
Good film, though.
Yeah, it was quite good. So they projected someone's body, I think the internal veins or whatever, above them, so that they could examine that, or maybe operate on that or something.
Yeah, this has become quite a standard sci-fi thing, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's creating a holographic representation of somebody's body.
But I get the feeling that was purely to look good for the audience, so that you can see what they were doing. You know, like the way that a lot of these things have been in a lot of shows lately, even things like CSI and that sort of thing. The visualizations, you know, like they've got it in Iron Man, where people wave their hands around and it makes a computer interface do something, and you can see that it's not very it's not very useful.
Yeah, it looks great on the film, but it wouldn't actually be useful. Yeah,
it's useful to show what they're trying to show.
This holographic thing from Final Fantasy, though, I think that could be quite useful. You're talking about doctors using gloves.
Yeah.
For what's the right term? For a virtual reality glove. So they could be manipulating this holographic body with this glove, and there's a robot then emulating that on a small level inside the body.
Yeah. Okay. What about cybernetic parts inside the body? You know, like we talked, Voyager had nanotech. Nanotech,
yeah.
So those are just little nanobots that go in your body and do stuff like fix you from the inside. Yeah. I first saw that sort of idea done in a Outer Limits episode.
Oh, yeah.
It was this man who was... The scientist was developing it, and I think he was either lost his funding or something, but he had to inject it into himself. There was some danger, but I can't think what it was. So he injected it into himself, but then they started not just fixing him, but they were making him evolve. They made him
better.
They made him better. They made him evolve. So they gave him gills. They gave him
why would they do that?
Speed and strength. I don't know. They just did. That was kind of the point of this story, that they were fixing him.
Making him better.
Yeah, what they thought was fixing is making him better. And then he thought, because he's a monster, he tried to kill himself. But they wouldn't let him kill himself. He stabbed himself, but then it just repaired from the inside, and like pushed the knife out.
Classic.
It is a bit of a classic, but when I first saw it, I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is a new idea.
What year was that?
Oh, it was, I don't know, mid-90s.
So here's a big question. With all of this medical technology, all these advancements, will we live a very long time in the future?
Will we live not a long time? Okay. Well, I remember reading a Star Trek novel ages ago, and it had Riker, and he was like 100.
Mm.
And it said, oh, it's fine, I'm not in my old age yet. And they said that the average human lifespan was 140. And I thought,
I don't think that's unreasonable.
That's a bit. Yeah. I thought at first that's a bit silly, but actually now you get loads of people living well past 100.
Yeah. In fact, I think I heard a little factoid on the radio the other day that the first person to live to 150 years old has probably already been born.
Really?
Mm.
Okay, so we've just got this society where we're so well taken care of. We've got good medical. I suppose we've got all this health advice all around. We do take care of our own bodies, don't we?
Yeah. Well, some of us do.
Some of us do.
I eat pizza. Lots and lots of pizza, and if it's got to be available in 3D printed form, I might be eating a lot more of it. Because, okay, it might need the raw materials, but if I can get that piped into my house to a pizza making machine,
piped straight into your mouth.
Yeah.
It makes a pizza in your mouth.
Pieces of pizza, yeah. Brilliant.
Just stick your tongue out and it just makes a very small pizza right there and then on your
just
tongue.
A slice of pepperoni. Lovely. Screw the pizza, get straight to the toppings. If I have to go out and buy pizza cartridges to put in the machine, I'll just buy 100 pizzas.
Yeah.
But if I get it piped in, like water.
No way. That would be ridiculous. No, because everyone will want something else.
Brilliant.
One house will want pepperoni. One house will want, different types of cheese. And you can't get cheese pumped to your house. That's ridiculous.
Why not? Cheese molecules.
Well, because if it was that easy, then we'd get like orange juice pumped to our houses. But we don't.
Ooh.
I heard that a long time ago. I thought this is a great idea. That instead of having hot and cold tap, you've got a middle one, which is orange.
Yeah. Brilliant.
It's more likely though that it will be something like Coke, because they've got the money to do it.
Council pop.
That won't mean anything to
a lot of people. Yeah.
But yeah, that's what some people call water.
Where were we?
Well, we're talking about medical things.
Oh yeah. Also, yeah. So we've established that I'm not going to live past 60, but a lot of people might live to at least 150.
And that is, well, yeah, it's very feasible. I don't know though, because it comes to a point where
there is a theoretical limit of how long we can live.
Yeah.
Due to old age, there's something to do with telomeres. I don't know the science.
No, I don't either. But I know
there's something inside our cells called telomeres. I think we run out of them or something, and that limits how many times our cells can reproduce.
Exactly. It's like copying a CD. If you copy a CD, then you copy that copy, then you copy that copy. It might not
degradation. And cancer.
Hmm.
Okay, so but if people are living for a very long time, is that a problem for society?
It is.
We've already got a growing population.
Well, if people are going to retire at 60 odd and then live another...
Well, this is why retirement ages are constantly going up.
Yeah.
But the planet's got to be overpopulated. I mean, it is anyway. So what if we start living to 200-300 years old?
Well, we've got a long way to go before we reach this planet's before the planet's full.
Yes.
I was listening.
If we start using it properly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, true. If we start, we can live under the ocean. Might as well. There's loads of room there.
Yeah. There's enough stuff here to keep us going with a huge population, but we would have to massively change our lifestyle.
Yeah, true. Anyway, we're going off the topic of medical.
Oh, I wanted to get onto this actually of what this would mean for society, where we all live to a ripe old age. I'm reading Larry Niven's Ringworld at the moment, and this is an issue in that that's kind of touched upon, where the main character is, he's about 200 years old or something. He's lived a very long life, and he's still in the prime of his life. So that's really interesting. But how does the planet cope? And he talks about some of the details of that. There's a lottery to decide who is who is allowed to give birth for population control.
Okay.
You need permits. They've decided certain people are definitely allowed to breed, others are not because of whatever reasons, maybe genetic imperfections or they're rubbish and wouldn't make good parents. But then there's always some leftover. They can never find enough people to fill all the places. There's this leeway, and so they're bringing this lottery to decide the extra several thousand people who are allowed to have children. I thought that's quite an interesting idea.
That is quite interesting. So that reminds me of this book that I've been reading, and it's by one of the co-writers of Red Dwarf, and it's called Colony, and it's about this guy, and it's a really cynical kind of book, and it's about this guy who's gone on this spaceship because Earth is being destroyed, natural disasters and global warming, all that sort of stuff. It doesn't really go into it that much, but they've decided to have this big colony ship that goes off. It's a society in space, and they've obviously thought about society needs to have all these rules, and so one man has come up with how the society will work. Now, the main character, he was in a lot of trouble and people wanted to kill him and things, and he switched places with the man who had invented the rules of society.
Okay.
Because that man, he's just won the lottery or something, and he wanted to live his life actually on Earth and not go on this spaceship.
Okay, yeah.
And so he's finding himself, he doesn't want to get himself caught, so he won't admit that he's not the guy who he's saying he is.
Yeah.
But he's got to justify all of the decisions that man has made, and the rules that they've got in society, it's kind of strict, really. But people have their own job, and they stick to that job throughout their entire lives, and their children will have the same job, and their children will have the same job, and so obviously he's thought about how to make the society work and everything, but there's obviously some problems there. And he's having this conversation in the bit that I was currently reading. He's talking to a priest, and the priest's there, and he's saying, "How can you justify, this kind of society? Because they have this kind of place as well. That's the recreation room or something. Essentially, it's a brothel that they've all got to go to." So he's just
right, yeah.
They've obviously thought that to keep people happy, they have to go to the recreational sex room or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's like that hologram ship in Red Dwarf.
Yes. Well, it's maybe the same guy came up with that idea.
Yeah.
And so the thing is about people having the same job. People are going to be born into prostitution because they're doing the same thing that their parents are doing. And so he's having this conversation with the priest saying, "How can you justify that?" And because he's got to justify it. He's got to say, "Well, I believe that this, even though he really doesn't believe it at all. He just doesn't want to be caught. Yeah. But that's same sort of thing. Someone's created they're creating a society, essentially, aren't they? And it's an interesting book because it doesn't have any of the tropes that you'd normally associate with things like a spaceship going out. Like normally, the first episode of any spaceship drama series, whatever, they'll fly around the spaceship going, "Oh, look, that's the spaceship we're all going to live on." It doesn't have that at all, and it sort of plays with it and goes. He goes in this corridor, like an elevator, and then they go, "Okay, you're on the ship now." And he goes, "What? Don't I not get to see the ship?" And they were like, "What? You want to see the ship?" Oh, okay.
Why would you? Nobody would ever actually see the outside of the ship.
No, exactly. But it's quite interesting.
So how do they deal with population growth?
Population growth? I don't know. I think they have arranged marriages and maybe arranged, birthings.
Yeah. So
they probably have a control over how many babies are actually being born.
Because I'm just trying to link this back to what we were actually talking about.
Sorry.
I was talking about a birth lottery.
Yeah.
Do you think a death lottery would be a good idea? Do you think that's feasible?
That's
Considering that
no.
if we could all live for potentially 500 years, would there be a cause to say, okay, you've had 200 years now, that's enough, be fair, make room for the next generation? And a Logan's Run situation where everybody reaches a certain age, their life has to end.
Make room, make room.
Yes.
No, it sounds cruel. That's not the kind of society you don't want to.
Nobody wants to live in that society.
No,
surely.
no, you don't.
But we have to have rules, and at the moment we accept that we have certain rules, and why in the future can we not accept that as a rule? That there's a limit to your life, and that it's the same rule for everybody else. For everybody.
It's taking your choice away. People want the choice for those sort of things.
But we don't have choice over life and death at the moment.
No, we don't. But I was just thinking then about the film Soylent Green. When I said make room, that they go to the suicide place, don't they? They can choose to commit suicide whenever they wanted to, and that's surely a more fair way of doing it because you can choose.
In fact, I was thinking this earlier when watching Futurama, and I saw the suicide booths.
Oh yeah.
And in fact, on my notes, I've actually got this conversation leading to suicide booths. So well done. We're on topic.
Well done.
I was thinking that I was going to argue that instead of forcing death, we should just be making it easier for people to commit suicide when they choose.
Yes, but you've got to be careful with encouraging that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because it's
so
like...
don't advertise suicide booths.
Well, it's kind of like there's problems with that now. I saw on TV yesterday, there was some news article about they're advertising junk food to kids. Now, it turns out they're not advertising junk food to kids. They just happen to be advertising junk food during family viewing time. Not during kids' programmes, but family viewing.
Well, we had this issue where they were advertising things like McDonald's, other junk foods are available, during kids' TV show. Like at the time when kids come home from school, there's a lot of kids' TV on. And they actually, in the UK, banned showing these adverts at that time.
They did, yeah. Now, that had an effect, didn't it? Now, I've no idea if it affected kids getting fat or anything, but it's meant that there wasn't as much kids' TV anymore.
Yes.
Because they can't...
It affected funding, yeah.
Yeah, because if they can't advertise during it, who's paying for it? Now, I'm not a fan of advertising, but I realise that if you're making TV programmes to make money, like everyone is doing anything to make money.
Yeah. It's a necessary evil for free broadcast. No, I can't pronounce.
Broadcrap? That's what you said.
Never mind.
Broadcasting.
I can't say that, yes. So this is now going on to family time TV, which is when isn't family time
yeah,
TV?
Well, this is the things like Dancing on Stars or whatever it's called.
Okay, yeah.
That sort of thing.
So the biggest companies with the most money can't advertise during the most popular shows. Yeah, that seems like a sensible law to me. Yeah,
that's kind of. But they had a balanced debate about it. You know, they had some people. They had a person who's very sensible talking about we need advertising because you need the revenue and whatever. Yeah. And then they had also people going, oh well, it makes me eat junk food. Are
you saying that we shouldn't advertise suicide booths in that way, or are you arguing that we should let people advertise junk food and stuff that's bad for you because that will bring down population growth?
Well, I'm not saying either of those things. Oh my god, what a decision! No, I'm just thinking that if you have a society where you're encouraging people to make room for others, it's gonna leave people feeling quite uncomfortable, isn't it?
Yes.
But then the opposite of that it means that we're going to have an overpopulated Earth, and then have to lift up huge crowds with one of those diggers like they do in Soylent Green, and just chuck them in the back. There's so many people, you just have to scoop them all up and chuck them in the bin.
So, would a death lottery be more humane, or a life limit?
No, no. The death lottery sounds... There's too much pressure there. You know, am I gonna lose this time? I don't know.
But that's life. Life is a death lottery.
Well, I suppose it is.
You're not actually entering, Dave. You're not going and buying a ticket, sitting down on a Saturday night and watching Tom Jones do a performance before the draw. And then have some fabulous TV presenter read out the numbers.
Well, but how about this? How about this then? Someone who's essential to society, someone who's a scientist who can do lots of research, new stuff, invent things that can make society, life, the planet better for everyone. He's got the same chance of being killed off by this death lottery as someone who sits at home, does nothing.
Yeah.
Sits at home, does nothing, has never provided anything for society. Both of those two people have got equal choice.
So, how about if criminals were given death lottery tickets?
Oh my God, I would like to say yes, but you're going to get people who are going to protest against it because, the human rights things.
Yes, but we're not saying the death penalty. We're just saying you get a ticket that increases your chance of dying in the next cull, which has to happen.
You know that the media is going to twist this quite a lot.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, okay, so maybe limiting population growth is the best way to go. Maybe we should have a birth lottery then, and maybe give people positive tickets for achievements. Say, okay, you've done something good. You get a ticket to possibly be in with a chance of having a child.
Oh God! But then there are people who would heavily argue against this, that it's their right to have children, and
which I think is kind of silly in a society where the planet's getting full. Why is that a right? I mean, in a civilized society, it's not. It might be natural, but me killing people is probably quite natural. Clubbing people over the head to steal their fruit.
Oh, lovely!
It's probably quite natural. We are animals, and violence is quite natural to us. But we've given up that right to live in a civilized society. So should we not maybe give up the right to bear children, to live in this overcrowded society?
Have you read any stories where this is the case? Because I can't think of any that spring to mind.
Larry Niven's Ringworld that I'm reading at the moment.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
And it goes into quite a lot of interesting detail about how these tickets are awarded.
Right, okay. What about, have you ever read Starship Troopers?
I've never read it, no.
No, I haven't. I was sort of... I've seen the film, and I love the film.
Yeah, the film hints at the child licence. It's only available to citizens.
That's it, citizens.
You have to become a citizen. Goes into this a lot more.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that social concept that you've got to have a good job or do something to become a citizen. Everyone else, in the film we don't even see everyone else, so we don't really know. We don't know what everyone else looks like. It could be slums. It could be poor people living in shanty towns. We don't really know. Well, the citizens. I just did air quotes there. Have all the nice houses.
I could imagine that being the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bit of an Elysium society.
Yeah.
Otherwise known as a dystopian society, of which there are many.
Yeah. Well, so there's going to be loads of stories that explore all these concepts.
Oh yes.
But there's going to be
Brave
stories.
New World, of course.
You know what? I've never read it again. It's on my list of things.
Difficult book to read.
Is it?
Yeah. It's a lot of detailed explanation of how the society works. It's quite dry.
Right.
But
okay.
utterly brilliant. And I was reading an article recently about how it's predicted the future much more accurately than 1984, and also it's a lot scarier than 1984.
Mm-hmm.
So we should probably be worried that this is the world that we're building, and stop worrying about 1984.
Okay. Does that story then portray this society in a negative light? Is it a warning, or is it just a backdrop to a story?
I think it's a warning. Yes, it's quite horrible in society. Well, most famously, they do the horrible thing of electrocuting babies to condition them. I can't remember what they're conditioning them against, but they basically have... children aren't raised by their parents. They're raised in a baby factory, essentially. And so they're all programmed from birth into certain social classes. In fact, from what I remember, it's years since I read it, they're actually graded according to their IQ. And so the ones with the low IQ are given the poorest education, and they're raised to be cleaners, manual labourers, and you have this class system going on. And they're trained. They're trained not to like certain things, and it's quite horrible.
Right. So, well, I've kind of lost track of what we're talking about, really.
Is Brave New World a bad thing? Yes.
Is it a bad thing?
It's
yes.
Fascist. It's eugenics, which is usually considered to be a very bad thing.
Is there still scope for people who are writing a science fiction story now? Is there still scope for those people to write about this topic, or has it been
absolutely? Yeah. 1984 was written about what George Orwell saw was wrong in the world then. Now, that is outdated, and I don't think we need to be worried. Well, we still kind of do. But people talk about 1984 like, oh, that's just around the corner, it's a bad thing. It's a completely different world, the one we're making now.
Mm-hmm.
But we are now looking into things like eugenics in quite a scary way. And yes, we should have more stories about this. More stories like Gattaca.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a world that we might be heading into with designer babies. I'm putting that one in air quotes because that's a media headline, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we are making decisions like, should children with disabilities be not born?
Oh God,
we are now actively
topic.
screening fetuses for certain defects and giving parents the choice of whether or not to go through with pregnancy. And now, in an overpopulated society, it might make sense to say, okay, look, this one's not going to have a life because it's defective. We're full up. I'm sounding horrible now, aren't I?
Well, it's a tough thing to talk about, isn't it, really?
Yeah. But an important thing to talk about and to discuss through fiction.
Yes, so, that's it. Discussing through fiction kind of allows you to put a case forward. I mean, I like it when people
in fact,
put
we
a case
had
forward.
an article about this quite recently. Somebody got in touch with me called, let me find it. Jeffrey Aaron Miller, book Children of the Mechanism. He wrote an article. It's on the SciFi Days website, talking about how he learned about the Holocaust when he was a child, and he decided to write a short story about it, and then later looking at things like sweatshops in India with forced child labour, he's decided to create a sci-fi dystopian world to explore these issues.
Okay.
So he's taking modern issues with the sweatshop and exploring it in the way that George Orwell was exploring fascism through 1984.
Well, that is really interesting, isn't it?
So there's definitely still scope for stories of this ilk. We just need to make sure that we're exploring a dystopia that is current and is based on what's wrong with the world today.
Well, I bet there's loads of these around that. Maybe,
I'm sure.
I don't know about. Well, okay. Well, how about we say to people, if you're listening to this, and you know of, dystopian society that explores these sort of issues of. Just write it in the comments. Just let us know.
Yes, stories about death lotteries as well, and suicide booths, euthanasia, the overcrowded future in which we're all eating insects. I'm probably coming across as a fascist in this podcast. I'm sounding horrible. I'm advocating everything.
No, but
I've advocated everything except electrocuting babies.
But you're just making a case for it, aren't you?
What would be interesting in a story, yeah.
Yeah, we're not talking about actually changing society. Neither of us are going to incite a rebellion.
That's the end of the podcast. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to respond to any of the issues we talk about in the podcast, or if you have any questions or suggestions of what we should talk about in the next episode, you can email me at mark@scifiideas.com or comment via YouTube, Facebook, Twitter or the SciFi Ideas website. And of course you can subscribe to SciFi Ideas through all of those mediums as well. I'd like to thank Chris Kentley of Eniad Games Role-Playing Resources for suggesting this topic. And as always, I'd like to thank Alligator Gumbo for providing our brilliant title music.
Heartbeat, a little tattoo.